Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we got to be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on back to day 2 of live NFL draft coverage. I am your host, David T. Pike from Motor City Mania. As we all know, the Lions have one pick today. It's in the second round. It's at pick number 50. But what we don't know is what, if anything, the Lions may or may not do in regards to potential trades, potential shakeups, or really just about anything. This is when Brad Holmes can really, potentially get funky with things. And I have a sinking, suspicion that Brad Holmes might just do that. I have a funny suspicion that Brad Holmes is going to do that. And I wouldn't at all be surprised that if tonight, since last night they drafted offensive tackle, what they're then going to do for this one is they're probably going to go edge and probably go defense. So I am very much intrigued and very much interested to figure out what exactly the Lions are getting set to do when it comes to their draft tonight, as far as, getting certain players. So I'm very curious to see what the Lions' whole game plan is for tonight, because I'm very confident that they're most likely going to draft an edge rusher or a linebacker. I have a very funny suspicion that that's going to most likely be the first player that we're going to see the Lions draft in the second round. Now, whether or not, if the Lions do that at pick 50, if they decide to trade up, if they decide to trade down, get more draft capital, I have no idea. But I will say this is the kind of spot where Brad Holmes has been known to make some really particularly interesting picks. I'm going to just say this, Hunter. I don't see the Lions drafting a wide receiver. I don't see it happening. Again, the Lions do not need a wide receiver. They just don't. Again, probably one of the best things I can say in regards to that is from what happened last night. The Lions drafted best player available, yes. That was what they got with Blake Miller, but it filled a position of need. I think the way that Brad Holmes is going to address this draft very much so is that, hey, we're drafting best player available, but we're sticking within positions of need that we clearly need help in. And I don't think the Lions are going to draft a running back. I don't see it happening a wide receiver. I just don't see it happening because the Lions don't need a wide receiver. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, they've got Jameson Williams, and they've got Isaac Tesla to round out their top 3. They then got Dortch, who is going to fill up that Calvin, the Khalif Raymond role. So it's like they don't need a wide receiver. They don't even have a inkling of a need at wide receiver, because once you get past those 4 guys of St. Brown, Jamo, Tesla, and Dortch, you've then got guys that are also still around, guys like Tom Kennedy. You still have Meeks. I mean, the Lions don't need a wide receiver. They don't even need a wide receiver really for depth. Now, maybe if they decided to take somebody that's a wide receiver at round 6 or 7, whatever. I could also see them maybe do that as a running back potentially, but that's for tomorrow. I will say this. I don't see myself being able to live stream tomorrow. Reason being is that tomorrow, the moving company that's coming to pick up my household goods for my military move is going to be here, and they're going to be here early. And chances are that's going to probably take up most of the day picking up and putting stuff into the moving truck. So that's what I most likely think is going to happen. Yes, Charlie May, I do have hair, contrary to popular opinion. Again, I must get this comment at least once a live stream. I do have hair. I have a full head of hair. You guys just don't typically see me not wearing a hat. And that's just, again, part of the persona, if you will, of when I am on camera, I'm almost always wearing a hat. And again, it's just because it's part of what I do when I wear clothes for this particular type of occasion. I usually wear all Lions gear or near all Lions gear. The only reason I'm not wearing a hat at the current moment is because, well, the draft itself has not yet started. And I was trying to get myself all situated. And I'm like, listen, I take my hat off at certain points to scratch my head or mess with my hair or whatever the case might be. But yes, I do have hair. You guys just don't really see it a whole hell of a lot. I could see the Lions trade into the third round. Again, the way Brad Holmes looked at that question last night when he was talking about it during the after round one, talk as far as what the pick they had gotten with, Blake Miller, is that they're definitely considering it. And the way I look at it is, okay, you have a long period of time between pick number 50 and pick number 108, or sorry, pick 118. So for me, I realistically think that the Lions are going to possibly try and get a third round pick. Now, how they decide to do that is going to be a little bit interesting, because the best thing about them for this year is that they have extra draft capital in all of the remaining rounds after round two. They have an extra fourth, they have an extra fifth, they have an extra sixth, they have an extra seventh. So you could package a trade deal where, hey, you know what? Maybe we give one of our fourths or our fifths or one of our fifths and sixths, and then we give a pick for next year, and then we're able to get that third round draft pick. But again, I don't see the Lions potentially really getting a trade that's going to be really high up in the third round. I don't see that happening. Probably the middle to the end part of the third round, but I do believe that at some point it would be reasonable to expect that the Lions are most likely going to trade into the third round somewhere, because, again, it's a long way between picks number 50 and pick 118. You're talking about literally almost 70 draft picks. And Brad Holmes is not just going to sit idly by for 70 picks almost and not try and find somewhere, somehow, to get a pick. So, yeah, Nick, I could see the Lions drafting a quarterback in, the later rounds. I could see that happening. And the only reason I could see it happening is because currently, right now, if I understand correctly, the current situation, I think the Lions only have two quarterbacks on their roster, which is obviously Goff and Teddy Bridgewater, which, okay, you've got your backup and starting quarterback locked down. But the thing is, with Teddy Bridgewater, he has bounced around over the last couple of years, kind of like on 1 year deals, 1 year kind of stints. Because it's like, okay, he was here for a couple of months in 2024. He was here for the 2023 season, took a hiatus for a little bit to go and coach high school football, and then came and played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and now he's back with the Detroit Lions. So it's like, okay, here, can you really expect that Teddy Bridgewater is going to be your long-term backup quarterback? No, you can't. And I'm pretty confident that the Lions, rather than continuing to play this game of, okay, who's going to be our backup quarterback, kind of like a revolving door every year, they would probably like to find a guy that is more of a long-term option who they can say, hey, we've got a solid backup in case something should happen to Goff. Because I know that's what they try to do with Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker obviously did not work out, didn't come close to working out. And I'm pretty confident they would like to find somebody who they can invest in long-term as a solid backup quarterback. But they have other more pressing needs than trying to figure that out. That need is substantially further on down the wish list as far as figuring it out. But having said that, it is 6:59, which means the draft is about to start here in literally a minute or two. I'm just not wearing a hat for the current moment. Once the draft starts, I will be putting a hat on. But Lone Wolf asks, how would I feel if the Lions drafted a defensive tackle? I'd feel fine if they drafted a defensive tackle in, like, say, round 4 or something like that. Because that, to me, makes sense. And I actually have a guy that in almost every mock draft that I have done or draft simulator that I have done, I have always picked him up around in that round 4 kind of range. And that is Chris McClellan. If I recall correctly, I believe he plays for Missouri. So that's a guy that I've kept my eye on in round 4. I've also kept my eye on a couple of other guys in rounds 4 and round 5 as well. So for me, it's like, okay, here, you know what? There's definitely some options that the Lions could take. I mean, is it possible we could take a safety, Dean? Yeah, it's possible, but I don't see the Lions going safety unless it is way too damn good of a player to pass up because of all the other guys that are available. I just don't see it happening. The Lions have a ridiculously loaded defensive secondary in terms of bodies and also in terms of talent. They just don't need to draft a safety. Now, if they found somebody that was in round 4 or round 5 that's like really, really damn good, it's like, hey, we can't pass this guy up, then yeah, sure, I could see it happening. But when I take a look at the whole situation, I just don't see it being a top pressing need for them. All right. So the day 2 coverage for the NFL draft has officially started, which means it is time to don the hat. Oh. Lone Wolf asks, what team shocked me the most yesterday? I mean, there were a couple of teams that kind of shocked me. The Rams, I think, were the biggest shock in terms of the fact that they drafted Ty Simpson at pick number 13, which I understand the logic as to why they did that. But I don't think that was the best option that they could have gone with at that pick. I get why they're doing it because obviously Stafford's 38 years old, soon going to be 39. So it's like, okay, he might have 1 or 2 more years left before you're going to really have to have the conversation about if he's going to play. So we'll see what happens. Nick, I really don't have much on Pavia. I really don't because honestly, I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to backup quarterbacks. I really don't. When it comes to backup quarterbacks, it's like, listen, you hold 2 jobs, 2 primary jobs. First primary job is you're a clipboard holder. Second primary job is you are to help the quarterback that's in front of you get ready for game day with practices. So it's like, listen, if you can do those 2 jobs, I couldn't care less as far as what job you do as a backup quarterback. That's why I never paid a whole lot of attention to Hendon Hooker. It's why I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to, to Kyle Allen. It's why I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to most of the guys that we've had as backup quarterbacks because they don't matter. Their job is very insignificant as far as what role they hold on the roster. And you have to think about this as well. If the Lions were to draft a quarterback in the late rounds, the chances are is that quarterback would eventually probably wind up being on the practice squad because typically the Lions have only ran with 2 quarterbacks going in to the season. So chances are they might not even draft a quarterback in the late rounds. They might wind up taking a quarterback as an undrafted free agent. Lone Wolf says Matt Millen is there. Keep him far away from the draft. I mean, the only good thing Matt Millen ever did as far as draft was concerned was drafting Megatron. That was it. That's the only good thing he can ever say he did when drafting in his entire career, was drafting arguably the best wide receiver that has ever physically played the game. I haven't seen Megatron yet on the screen, but I'm more than confident he's there because he's supposed to announce the Lions' second-round pick this afternoon. Or, pardon me, this evening. All right. San Francisco is on the clock. The second round has officially started. So, with that having been said, the 49ers hold the 33rd overall pick. There have been rumors that have stipulated that the 49ers could potentially be looking to trade back yet again out of the 33rd overall pick. So we'll see where we're going. But according to Adam Schefter, it has just come through that the 49ers are not going to trade back. They are going to stick and pick at number 33. So the 49ers are going to pick at number 33. So the 49ers have a couple of needs that they need to be filling. Obviously, their biggest need is going to be somewhere on the offensive line. So I could see an offensive lineman get drafted here. They might go edge rusher as well because that's another big need for them. So we'll see what's going to happen here. If I had to go in a set of order, Dean, as far as what edge rusher I like most in second round, here's how I would rank it. I would put Zion Young as my first overall guy that I like the most. I'd then put Gabe Yakus at number 2, and then I'd put Cassius Howell at number 3. And the biggest reason I don't like Cassius Howell is because of the fact that when I look at him as a guy who is primarily a situational pass rusher. I look at a guy who he's only going to work in certain areas. I don't see him as an every down kind of player. I don't see him as a guy who is going to be able to do everything the Lions want him to do. Now, again, I don't know everything about players. I will be the first to admit that. I also know this, that what I think is irrelevant compared to what Brad Holmes and the Lions are thinking within their draft room. So we'll see what happens. Derek Moore I like, but Derek Moore I think is more of a mid to late second round pick. I could see him going in like picks number 60 range. He could potentially bump up if there's a run on edge rushers, but we'll see. As always, don't try to spoil the picks in the chat. If I find out what the pick is before it's announced on the stream for the actual, whatever show you're watching, whether it's ESPN, ABC, CBS, whatever it is, I'll put that out. But don't spoil it in the chat before either I announce it or if it's announced in the live stream as far as on the actual show. But currently, just to give you guys a format as far as what we can expect in the second round. Last night it was an 8-minute pick selection. So last night every team had 8 minutes for the first round pick. Tonight every team has 7 minutes for the second round picks. So again, the NFL is trying to speed up the process as far as how long these picks are taking. And I think they probably got that not only from the fact that, fans were probably getting tired of sitting there waiting forever and a day for picks to be made. But at the same time, they probably noticed that almost every team in the NFL never takes the full time to actually get the picks in. Most of them will probably get the pick in with at least, a couple of minutes to remain. Cornerback, I'm going to just be honest. I don't think cornerback is something the Lions need to worry about. And I don't think they're going to worry about it. You have to think about it. The Lions have Rakestraw, who they're banking on. They have DJ Reed. They're banking on him. They have Arnold. They also have other guys like Rock Ya-Sin. They picked up Roger McCreary. So I don't really see them needing to add a cornerback. They have plenty of competition for camp at that spot, that group. So again, I don't see a safety. I don't see a cornerback. I'll be honest. If I'm looking at defense, I'm looking at edge rusher primarily, linebacker next, and I'm looking at somebody on the interior defensive line. Because it's like, listen, you have Aleem McNeil and you have Tyleik Williams. You also still have Levi Onwuzurike there. So do you really need to draft somebody? No, but we also know the Lions like to have competition. So I could see the Lions potentially pick someone up maybe in round 4 or 5 if they really, really like, and they're like, hey, again, it's too good to pass up. Let's take him. And it has just officially come through. The 49ers pick is in. So as expected and reported, the 49ers are officially picking at pick number 33. Still waiting for any word or announcement on who the 49ers are selecting at pick 33. Thank you for the subscription and loyal subscription after Life Restoration. I definitely appreciate you sticking around for as long as you have. I love having loyal subscribers. I love having new subscribers. I love talking to new people, and I love talking to those that have been around for a long time. So I definitely enjoy having you. Lone Wolf, I think the only reason the NFL is evolving is because teams are starting to realize the impact that a running back can have. For a while there, it was like running backs kind of were starting to go the way of the dodo bird. But a lot of teams started recognizing the impact that a running back can really have on a team's offense and being able to be fully fluid and fully able to do what it needed to do. And that's what happens when you have picks like Bijan Robinson. That's what happens when you have picks like Jahmyr Gibbs. They can show how a fully functioning and a fully inclusive offense can really look if it's done correctly. So the first pick of the second round, the 49ers are selecting Mississippi wide receiver Dejon Stribling. So a wide receiver is the first pick of the second round. Ole Miss wide receiver Dejon Stribling. So first pick of the second round is a wide receiver for the 49ers, which is interesting because if I recall correctly, didn't they draft a wide receiver in the first round last year with Ricky Pearsall? So their first pick this draft is another wide receiver. Interesting. I would have thought they would have gone with an offensive lineman or potentially an edge rusher. Honestly, Dean, I wouldn't take a guard at 50 because there's really no good guards at 50, in my opinion, that are worth that spot. But, again, Brad Holmes could surprise people. Again, the way I look at it is the way the board has fallen, the way the Lions have their needs set up, the edge rusher is the most prominent need that they're going to need. It's the most prominent position they have to get filled. So, again, I think it's going to be best player available, and I think that depending upon who's the best edge rusher there, that's what they're going to go with. Now, if they have a chance to trade up and get, a Jacob Rodriguez, that's something I could see happening. If the edge rusher that they're looking for is not there at pick 50 and they decide to sit there, maybe they go with Jake Galladay, who is a really, really damn good, intriguing linebacker prospect who also has some special teams capability. So, those are guys that I would pay very close attention to, other than the edge rushers, such as Zion Young, such as Gabe Yakus. These are all guys that the Lions should definitely have on their radar, and I do believe have on their radar. In my honest opinion, if the Lions were to draft a guard to compete with the likes of Christian Mahogany, with the likes of Miles Frazier, with the likes of Juice Scruggs and all those other guys they have on the interior, the guy that I'm looking at is probably going to be Billy Schroth out of Notre Dame. He's going to be right there in the Lions' wheelhouse in the 4th round. I really think that he is going to be someone that the Lions could really pay attention to in the early 4th round. So the Cardinals pick is officially in. And the Cardinals are drafting a guard. The Cardinals are selecting Texas A&M guard Chase Basantis. So 2 offensive players quickly off the board in this draft. Chase Basantis for the Cardinals at pick 34 and a wide receiver for the 49ers at 33. So the Cardinals last night went with an offensive player in a running back at pick number 3, and they go with another offensive player at guard to follow that up. Honestly, I don't watch college football a whole lot, Lone Wolf. I've never gotten into it with the same fervor as I've gotten into with pro football. Again, for me, the one thing that I like about pro football is the consistency of watching the same players year after year after year. It's like, hey, player comes in, signs a contract, you are expecting that those players are going to be there for a while, and you start to develop an attachment to those players, and you start to associate those players with the team. I don't have a whole lot of affinity for college programs because it's like, listen, the way the NIL money now works, guys can literally jump around within their 4 or 5 years in college. And it's like, listen, 1 year they might be with this team. The next year they might be with somebody else. And honestly, college football has lost a lot in the sense of because of that NIL money, it doesn't have the same sort of competitiveness to it that it used to have back in the early 2000s. It's all about money, endorsements, and things of that, which I get it. College players are trying to pay for things as well. But for me, it's like it's lost a bit of the soul of what made it so, so wonderful back in the early 2000s. Because I remember watching college football games with my dad. I remember watching the U of M game with Ohio State. Same thing with U of M and Michigan State. I used to watch those games. I would also watch other games with my father. But I haven't really gotten back into college football as much because it's just not what I'm really into because I can't get into it as much as I get into the NFL. The Bills pick is in, waiting for the announcement as what that player is going to be. And at number 35, the Bills have selected Clemson edge rusher TJ Parker. So the first defensive player of the 2nd round is officially off the board. The Bills are selecting edge rusher TJ Parker out of Clemson. And then following that up, at number 36, there's been a trade. The Raiders are trading out of pick 36, and the Texans have traded up to go and take that spot from the Raiders. So the Bills select edge rusher TJ Parker out of Clemson, and then the Texans are taking the Raiders' spot by trading with them at pick number 36. Thirty-fifth. So now we're looking at the Texans picking at pick number 36. So the Texans traded with the Raiders and traded pick 38 for pick 36, and also traded their 91 overall pick for the Raiders' 36th overall selection and a 117 overall selection. So the Texans traded a third-round pick and picked up a fourth-round pick while moving up 2 spots. Don't know if I'd call that a good trade, but okay, well, so be it. I'm not the GM of the Texans. Currently, right now, Michael Flip, the Lions don't have a third-round pick. They currently don't have one. But I will say this, just because they currently don't have one does not mean that they won't have one by the time the night's over. Again, if there's one thing I know about Brad Holmes is that he's always on the phone. He's trying to find something. And again, I would not at all be surprised if at some point Brad Holmes orchestrates a trade, because again, as I was saying before the draft got started for this second day, going from pick 50 all the way to pick 118, that's 70 picks to not have anybody on your docket to select. I can't see Brad Holmes waiting 70 picks to try and get somebody. That's just my personal opinion. So I personally think that Brad Holmes at some point is going to orchestrate a trade. I can see it happening. If it doesn't, then okay, it doesn't happen. But I don't see Brad Holmes waiting 70 picks to make another selection. I don't think he can wait 70 picks. I think he's going to get antsy. Still waiting for word on who the Texans selection at pick number 36 is going to be. Still no word as of yet. All we know is what the trade compensation was, which I've already relayed, but I'll relay it once more. Texans got pick 36 and 117 in a swap with the Raiders for pick 38 and 91. How's it going, Lots of Pyro? Here's a report that just came out from Albert Breer. Albert Breer says that the Lions are sniffing around to trade up in round 2 for one of the edge rushers per Albert Breer. So there are reports that the Lions could be looking to trade up at the start of the second round to potentially get somebody. Currently, the Lions are picking at number 50. So is it possible they could trade up? Absolutely, it's possible they could trade up. How far is the real question? So the Texans pick has officially been announced, or leaked, I should say, by Tom Pelissero. Tom Pelissero reports that the Texans are selecting Ohio State defensive tackle Caden McDonald. So another defensive player is now off the board. The Texans are taking a defensive tackle in Caden McDonald out of Ohio State University. That's an emotional big boy right there. That's an emotional big boy. Booger's talking quite highly about this guy for the Texans. Probably going to be one of the few guys that's actually going to walk out onto the draft stage for day number 2. Kind of reminds me of when Brian Branch did that back in 2023. So the Giants are now on the clock, and their pick is in. Who here watched the Blake Miller introductory press conference? I thought that was a very good press conference. I liked it. All I kept hearing out of him was excited, 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 absolutely excited for getting ready to get into the building, working with Penei Sewell, working with Hank Fraley, and, getting to work and putting in that, studying and that, physical preparation for the season. Oh, Blake is definitely happy to be here, and I think Blake is going to do excellent for us. I think, and this is one of the things I've noticed around a bunch of people that I've seen on social media, whether it's been Twitter, whether it's been TikTok, whether it's been Facebook. There's a lot of people that are looking at the Blake Miller pick, and they're like, oh, it's a safe pick. It's not a sexy pick. It's not a bold pick. It's like, listen, there's nothing wrong with a safe pick. For Blake Miller, he fits exactly what the Lions need. He's going to come right in. He's going to be an instant starter. He's going to do exactly what the Lions need him to do. And think about it this way, if Blake Miller at his floor is going to be a slightly improved Taylor Decker at the right tackle, then you've definitely won. Because we know what Taylor Decker was able to provide for us at right tackle as an injured guy, playing through injuries. Not going to have to worry about that with Blake Miller. So it's like, listen, if the floor for him is a healthy, slightly above average, Taylor Decker as far as what he could provide towards the midpoint of his career, then I'm happy with that. So the Giants pick is in. Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport have reported it that the Giants are selecting Tennessee cornerback Colton Hood. So the Giants are selecting a cornerback at pick number 37. So already seeing a slight run on defensive players. Had 2 offensive players to start the draft. Now we've seen 4 straight players on defense. So it looks like that one cornerback that everybody was worried about with the injuries is continuing to slide further and further down the boards. Jeremy Fowler is thinking that there could be a DB run here that's coming up as the Raiders are now up on pick number 38, and he thinks that there could be another defensive back that's about to get called here as the Raiders now are up on the clock. And as if almost on cue, the Raiders are selecting another cornerback to follow up after this most recent pick by the Giants with Colton Hood. The Raiders are now selecting Arizona cornerback Traden Stukes. So again, the Lions are getting closer and closer to their pick, and so far there's only been one edge that's been drafted so far, and I believe that was TJ Parker. So who knows? The Lions may not have to trade at all if the board keeps falling the way that they're falling. Personally, I think, Lone Wolf, anytime that you have a pick that's associated with Matt Millen, whether he's announcing it or picking it from times past, there's a bit of a curse that's associated with that pick. Hopefully less of a curse associated with it since he's announcing it, not making the pick. Not much, Rich Hustle. I'm just trying to get through these days. Tomorrow is going to be a very busy day for me. I've got my movers coming tomorrow that are going to pick up my household goods and ship them down to Texas. So I am definitely running on fumes right now. But the Browns are on the clock now, and the Browns pick is officially in. No word on who that pick is as of yet. But the Browns are on the clock, and they are picking, so there is no trade. And the pick is in. The Browns are selecting wide receiver Denzel Boston. So another wide receiver has been taken in the top of the second round. So far, we've had two wide receivers that have been taken. We've had a number of defensive players that have been taken, cornerbacks especially, and now the Lions are 10 picks away from their pick at number 50. And so far, only one edge rusher has been taken, and that being TJ Parker. So very, very good so far for the Lions as far as how the start of the second round has fallen, in that the Lions have a potential to make a move if they feel the need to without having to move up too much. No, Rich Hustle, you have not missed the Lions pick yet. Their pick is 10 picks away. So their pick is still upcoming. But as I was reporting earlier, according to Albert Breer, the Lions have been sniffing around to potentially want to trade up to go and get an edge rusher. So we'll see what happens. The Lions could decide to stay at pick 50. They could decide to move up a little bit and get the guy that they're after. But currently, right now, all of the edge rushers that a lot of people have been talking about are still on the board. Zion Young is still on the board. Gabe Yakus is still on the board. I know some people are still talking about Cassius Howell. He is still out there as well. So there are options available at edge rusher for the Detroit Lions. I mean, I'm going to say this, Professor Bunny. When it comes to the Browns are exactly where the Lions were, 5-6 years ago. And to be honest, I think the Browns have been in that spot longer than the Lions have been, because the Lions have had a couple of really good draft picks over the last 20-something years. Obviously, they had Megatron. Obviously, they had Ndamukong Suh. Obviously, they had Matthew Stafford. But whoever gets typically drafted by the Browns, it almost never, ever works out. Like, the Browns have had a couple of great selections over the last couple of years. Obviously, Myles Garrett, Joe Thomas before that. But it's like 90% of the guys that go to Cleveland, it just never works for them. It's almost like if you get drafted by the Browns, it's like you're in trouble. And I think the Browns fan base is even more disillusioned and disheartened by the whole process than the Lions fans are right now. And that's not even with the success that the Lions have had over the last 4 years. So the Browns drafted a wide receiver in Denzel Boston, and it's just been announced that the Chiefs, who are right after them at pick number 40, have selected edge rusher Mason Thomas. So a second edge rusher has now come off the board. Oklahoma edge rusher Mason Thomas has been selected by the Chiefs at pick number 40. Ziggy Ansah, yeah, he was, how do I say this? Ziggy Ansah was a decent pick, but the problem is that he just didn't have enough experience when we drafted him. I don't see Ray. I don't see the Lions picking a safety. I see them picking either a linebacker or an edge rusher, and of those two, I could see them picking an edge rusher. I could. The only reason I could see them picking a linebacker is if they think that he is good enough to where he can come off the edge as a linebacker and still play at a high level as a linebacker, kind of fill that role that was left vacant by Alex Anzalone. I still think that the Lions are going to try and move Malcolm Rodriguez back to that role and let him resume it. But I could see them potentially make a move for Jacob Rodriguez, or maybe they might think about going for Jake Galday out of Cincinnati. Oh, wow. We're moving along here. So the Browns pick has just been announced on television. The Chiefs haven't even gotten up on the clock yet as far as on TV, but we already know who the Bengals pick is, who's pick number 40. Second edge rusher in a row. The Bengals have selected edge rusher Cassius Howell with the 41st overall pick. So last year, they drafted a first-round pick at the edge. This year, they've now selected a second-round pick at the edge. So a second edge rusher in a row, and the third one in the start of the second round has been drafted. So there is starting to be a mini run on edge rushers, as now 3 edge rushers have been taken. Cassius Howell has been taken, TJ Parker has been taken, and Mason Thomas has been taken. So Zion Young is still out there. You still have also you still also have Gabe Yakus. Still have also Derek Moore. But Derek Moore, I think you can get after pick 50. So the Saints are now on the clock, at least in Twitter world. And the Twitter world has announced that the Saints are selecting a defensive tackle. They're drafting defensive tackle out of Georgia, Kristen Miller. So the draft is now in reality at pick number 43. So the Lions are now only 6 picks away from drafting. So 2 edge rushers in a row, and then now a defensive tackle. They are going fast. That's why I'm constantly checking Twitter, because it's like, hey, the actual broadcast stream is so far behind Twitter, because Twitter has already announced Twitter just got to the Saints selection like a minute ago, and the Saints are just now being announced on the broadcast. So the Saints selection of Kristen Miller out of Georgia has been done, but now we're at pick number 43. For the moment, Rich, yes, Zion Young is still on the board. Rich, I'm pretty solid on Gabe Yakas. I like Gabe Yakas, but if I had my pick between Zion Young and Gabe Yakas, I would take Zion Young over Gabe Yakas. Me personally. Derek Moore is a guy that I've really talked about before, and I think that the Michigan connection definitely has sparked interest, but I really am thinking that he's probably going to be closer towards the end point of the second round, maybe beginning of the third round. So we have another trade, but this is not a trade of picks. It's actually a trade for a player. The Cowboys are trading for 49ers linebacker D. Winters. So the Cowboys are trading again, but they're trading for a player from the 49ers, getting linebacker D. Winters. So the Dolphins are currently on the clock. Their pick is in according to the broadcast. Don't know what the pick is yet. Rich Hustle is reporting that the Lions have just traded up to pick number 44. So the Lions have made a move to move up 6 spots to pick number 44, according to Rich Hustle. I have yet to see that on Twitter just yet, but yep. So the Lions have traded with the Jets to 44, and they have traded with their former defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn. So at 44, I think the Lions could select their edge rusher here. I could see them go after Zion Young here. I could see them go after Gabe Yakas. So I'm very, very very interested to see who the Lions take at pick 44. Jacob Rodriguez just went to the Dolphins, so probably the best defensive player as far as analytics has been taken off the board. But the Lions trade with the Jets was actually pretty good. They moved up 6 spots and they only gave up pick number 128 in the 4th round. So they moved up 6 spots, exchanged second round picks with the Jets, and they only gave up pick 128 to do it. So I call that a good trade. You move up 6 spots and you get a higher second round draft pick, move up 6 spots to do it. So Lions are picking at pick 44. Jacob Rodriguez just went off the board to the Dolphins at pick 43. So who are the Lions taking at pick 44? Trade compensation was the Lions gave up pick 128 and exchanged their second round pick. So they gave up one pick to move up 6 spots. And it was their second, fourth round pick. Still waiting for word on who the Lions are going to be picking at pick number 44. But the Lions pick is in. So we are just waiting to hear what the announcement is. And it should be Megatron. Yep, Megatron is walking out to the stage right now with the draft card in hand. Oh, AG didn't have anything to do with it, but the fact it's the Jets is still interesting. Wow. Derek Moore is the edge rusher at pick 44. Oh, boy. So they got their edge rusher, but I guarantee you this, there are going to be people that are going to be saying this is a reach. They're going to definitely say this is a reach. I can see it already happening. But the Lions got their edge rusher in Derek Moore. They went back to the Michigan pipeline opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. So they've now got 2 U of M edge rushers in Moore opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. But I can tell you this right now. I can already tell you this. There are going to be people that are going to say that this is a reach. But the Lions look excited getting Derek Moore. But so far, the Lions have followed the script as far as what guys they were going to go after. They got their offensive tackle at pick number 17. They traded up, got aggressive, went and got Derek Moore at pick number 44. So you can't say that the Lions have not been doing what people have thought they should have been doing. They got an offensive tackle. They got an edge rusher with their first 2 picks. Now, you can say what you want about the fact with Derek Moore possibly being drafted about 20 spots higher than where he should have been. And I guarantee you, I already know that there's going to be people that are going to be saying that. I already know people are going to be saying that. Because most of the draft mock simulators had Derek Moore probably closer to like the low 50, the high 50s, low 60s range. But overall, you can't deny that the Lions have actually been addressing the needs that they have. And they made a trade. They specifically traded up to go and get him at pick 44. I'm looking right now, Lone Wolf, to see how he is in terms of the run. So just give me a minute here while I look this up. So pass rush grade in 2025 was a 92.4, so elite. Run defense grade was at a 76.3, so that's good. It's not great, but it's good. Pass rush win rate was at a 19.8%. Run stop rate was at a 5.5%. For the most part, he's done relatively well. His worst game was against Northwestern. Also didn't have the greatest game against Ohio State, but I mean, overall, it is what it is. But according to PFF, it says Moore is a smaller edge defender who wins with quickness and pass rush IQ. Lack of strength may limit sack totals, but he can contribute as a rotational 3-4 outside linebacker. No, they did not commercial over Megatron. I mean, here's the thing, folks. I'm just going to say this for what it is. Has Derek been super heavy focused on drafting an edge rusher, getting an edge rusher? Yes, he has. But at the same time, I can agree with him that an edge rusher was something that the Lions definitely needed. Personally, I'm going to say this. If it was between Derek Moore and Zion Young, I would have probably gone with Zion Young. But it's like, listen, Derek Moore comes from a program at University of Michigan where it's like, listen, they produce winners. That's what they do. They produce winners. Aiden Hutchinson is a winner, has developed into a top 5, top 3 edge rusher in the NFL. So for me, it's like, hey, you go back to that same pipeline, you get Derek Moore, you've now got 2 bookend edge rushers from the University of Michigan. Those guys are going to be talking, they're going to be communicating all the way through. No, lots of pyro. Moore did not play with Hutch at all. So what happened is Moore came in the year after Hutch was drafted. So the year Hutch was drafted, Moore came in the next year. So they have not played together at all. They have not played together. And honestly, the way I look at it is let's consider this, folks. The Lions have now a good nucleus at edge. You've got Aiden Hutchinson. You've got Derek Moore. You've got Ahmed Hazanin. You've got DJ Wanham. I mean, those are 4 guys right there that are going to be able to impact an offense's ability to really make a difference in the passing game. And then on the interior, you still have Tyleik Williams, you still have Ali McNeil, you still have Levi Onwuzurike. You don't know what you got with Levi Onwuzurike because we haven't seen him fully healthy yet, but we know what Ali McNeil is like when he's fully healthy. He's a beast. Tyleik Williams is going to take a jump forward this year. If he jumps what I think he's going to jump, he's going to be a beast. So now you have a front 4 that has the ability to pressure inside and outside. So you can say what you want about taking Derek Moore at pick number 44. And you know what? I'm pretty sure there's going to be people that are going to talk about it being a reach, but it's like, listen, the one thing we know about the Lions is that they take the guys that they want. The way they evaluate, the way they look at their boards, the way they look at their players, they want players that fit certain qualities. And when you take a look at how Brad Holmes is drafted over the last couple of years, he has gained currency in terms of how he's officially ran his drafting cycles. Because it's like, listen here, folks. You look at all the picks that the Lions have made in the past that people have said, oh, well, that was a reach. The Jahmyr Gibbs that pick was initially thought of as a reach. Now the best running back in the NFL. Jack Campbell, when he was drafted, considered a massive reach by a lot of people. Now considered one of, if not the best linebacker in the NFL. So to me, it's like, hey, if you want to say that the reach of Derek Moore is a big problem, I'll be like, okay, that's your opinion. But let's remember something here. A lot of people thought Jack Campbell was a reach. A lot of people thought Jahmyr Gibbs was a reach. And both of those guys have now turned into the best position guys at their spots in the NFL. So the way I look at it is you have to understand what the Lions are getting here with Derek Moore. They're getting a solid, very good pass rusher. They're getting a guy who is going to have that University of Michigan mindset, just like Aiden. Extremely intelligent, high motor, tenacious. That's going to be perfect because let's understand something here. You want another edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Absolutely you do. But let me just put this out there for what it is. Do you want another Aiden Hutchinson opposite of Aiden Hutchinson? As much as that sounds tantalizing to behold, I'm just going to say this for what it is. you have to think about the long-term, practicality here. You have to think about the long-term practicality. Derek Moore is probably going to get about half when it comes time, if he really pans out, of what Aiden Hutchinson is making. So instead of making like $180 million for a total contract, he might make $100 to $120 million. That is a manageable contract for an edge rusher. Trying to pay two edge rushers $180 to $200 million, that's not feasible. So realistically, the Lions got a guy that, to me, makes sense. He makes sense not only in terms of what the Lions are looking for in terms of a culture fit, but he also makes sense in terms of what the Lions need as far as, overall player, in terms of overall culture, in terms of a lot of different things. So to me, it's like, hey, everybody might say, well, why didn't the Lions go with this guy? Why didn't they go with that guy? The way I look at it is that, again, it's not all about talent here. Because let's just call it for what it is. If you're going in the NFL, you are a part of a very, very select group of guys. 1% in terms of the physicality measurements in order to get to that NFL level. But what matters to the Lions, other than that physical attribute of talent, is, okay, what's your football ethics? What's your culture fit as far as hard work, as far as showing up and doing your job, as far as not being cancer in the locker room? You're not going to have that problem with the guys that the Lions have drafted. The Lions drafted two guys already that are perfect culture fits. And so the way I look at it is the Lions have not only gotten great players in terms of talent, but they've gotten guys that are going to absolutely fit what they're looking for culture-wise. So to answer your question, Rich, I see your question. He asked, so do the Lions have another second-round pick, or we don't pick again until the 5th round or something? So the answer to that question, Rich, is this. The Lions currently hold now they hold 1 4th-round pick, they hold 2 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks, and 2 7th-round picks. Because in order to facilitate that trade that they just did with the Jets to move up from 50 to 44, they traded away pick 128 in order to do it. So by moving up 6 spots, they get Derek Moore, and now they have 1 4th-round pick, which is pick 118, and then they have their 2 5ths, their 2 6ths, and their 2 7ths. So could the Lions facilitate another trade into the 3rd round later? They could, but we're going to see what happens. Oh, as far as draft notes, it's not even comparable. Josh Pascal was considered a high upside, high character player, just like Derek Moore, but Derek Moore, I think, has more potential and better upside in terms of being able to work out in the NFL. Plus, on top of that, you have to think about it this. When Josh Pascal was coming into the NFL, he was just coming back from the cancer scare. There were also other questions about his durability long term. I have not heard any concerns about Derek's durability. Tripping over my tongue there. Derek's durability. So the way I look at it is it's like, okay, you're still getting highly motivated, highly talented, and, good football character player, just like you did with Josh Pascal, but you're getting a guy who's much more durable. You're getting a guy that's is going to fit right in with the culture, is also going to fit in seamlessly with, Aiden Hutchinson. And those guys are going to definitely talk. They're going to help get each other better, especially Hutchinson for Derek. So to me, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm good with the pick. I'm not bouncing for joy per se. I'm not going absolutely, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over it. But the way I look at it is, again, solid pick. I know, like I said, there's going to be people that are going to call it a reach, but it's like, listen, you have to look at what the Lions were wanting with the pick. They wanted a guy who was going to absolutely do what they needed him to do. And that's exactly what Derek Moore is going to do. If you play for a program like Michigan, you have to be able to do the job that you were set out to do. And again, I'm just gonna put this out there for what it is. Derek Moore, in his last year at freaking Michigan, had an 89.9 overall defensive grade. The guy had 11 sacks, 9 quarterback hits, 21 quarterback hurries. And I mean, it's like, listen, you can talk about the fact that he's only 6'3". You can talk about the fact that he's not a big, bulky guy like Aiden Hutchinson, because Aiden Hutchinson's like, what, 6'6", 6'7", something like that. But it's like, listen, you're getting a guy who has got high football IQ, who is explosive, who knows how to get after the pass rusher. Because here's the way I look at it. Do you honestly think that a guy that's at that size of 6'3" has not had to contend or deal with guys that are bigger than him and still find ways to win? Yeah, that's a good point too, Lone Wolf. Take a look at the last year's first two picks. Last year's first 2 picks were the exact inverse of what this year's were. In the first round, the Lions drafted a defensive lineman. In the second round, they drafted an offensive lineman. This year, they drafted an offensive lineman first, then they drafted a defensive lineman. So again, building through the trenches. Building through the trenches. Potentially, Professor Bunny, potentially. Again, classes are going to fluctuate in terms of, in terms of comparative strength and weakness. The way I look at it, simply put, is this. I believe that Derek Moore is going to be a better overall selection by a long shot compared to Josh Pascal, simply because of the fact that he comes from a better program, more durable, and I think that's going to just absolutely work in his benefit. Corrupted? Absolutely. I absolutely think so. That, so far so good. I'm gonna call this for what it is. The Lions fans that wanted Brad Holmes to do what they wanted him to do, they got exactly what they're asking for. You get a high-end offensive tackle, no developmental problem, no need for development, no need for worrying about injuries. You get a good defensive edge rusher in Derek Moore. You've gotten exactly what you've asked for. You've gotten exactly what you asked for. So for me, it's like, hey, at this point then, Lions fans, if things don't work out, you've got nobody but yourself to blame if it comes back and things don't work. Because it's like, listen, you're getting exactly what you wanted. You're getting the edge rusher you wanted. You're getting the offensive tackle that you wanted. May not have been the exact person per se, but you're getting the positions that you wanted. You're getting the edge rusher you wanted. You're getting the offensive tackle that you wanted. So you can't say that Brad Holmes has not, quote unquote, listened and heard what has been said. But getting back to Derek Moore here really quickly, let's put this in perspective here. Over the last, 3 years that he's been in college, Derek Moore has posted almost 20 sacks in 3 years. And think about it here. When Aiden Hutchinson was in college, he really didn't, quote unquote, step on into like the national scene per se until that last season. So it's like, listen, what if Derek Moore takes a similar trajectory build as far as talent and as far as impact as what Aiden Hutchinson had? But you have to think about it. His projection is going to be a lot easier because when Aiden Hutchinson got here, he had nobody around him to work with. He was kind of building things by himself and with Aleem McNeil. Derek Moore's coming into this situation. He's got Aiden Hutchinson. He's got, freaking Aleem McNeil. He's got Tyleek Williams. I mean, I'm going to tell you this right now. For 5 offensive linemen up front, that's a handful to handle. That is an absolute monster of a load to handle. Honestly, Professor Bunny, I would not go with safety insurance. I've said it multiple times. Safety is not the position I think the Lions go after in this draft. I think the next position that they go after is linebacker. I really, really do. I look at, the fact that the Lions lost Alex Anzalone, and it's like, listen, you know what? They've got Malcolm Rodriguez. They've got Derek Barnes. They've also got, Jack Campbell, but it's like, listen, I think that the Lions are going to want to bring in another linebacker. I really do. And there's a lot of good linebackers that they can find in the 4th round that could really fill in for what they're looking for. So, I mean, again, at this point, you've got to think about it like this. You sincerely have to think about it like this. With the Lions' first 2 picks, they filled their remaining holes. Think about that. So at this point, the remaining draft picks that they have are to fill depth and are to fill other potential things that they want. The needs are taken care of now. Now it's all about gravy. You're drafting for wants now. You're drafting for guys that it's like, okay, plug and play here, put as a, another guy that can compete here, help in terms of depth there. The Lions now have filled their 2 biggest needs that were remaining. You got your offensive tackle, you got your other edge rusher. So at this point, everything else that the Lions go after is gravy. Everything else that they address is just adding more depth and rotation. I don't see a corner. Guys, I'm just going to say this one more time. I don't see a defensive back. I don't see it. Guys, I'm just going to tell you, the Lions have 12 defensive backs on their roster. Think about this, folks. They've got Rock Ya-Sin, they've got Roger McCreary, they've got the guy they picked up out of Tampa, they've got Arnold, they've got Enos Rakestraw, they got DJ Reader. I mean, they're loaded for bear with bodies at the defensive back room. They don't need any more defensive backs. They've got more than enough for competition. If there's a guy that's there that it's too good to pass up, sure, I could see it happening. But I don't see a cornerback or a safety being their top next priority that they want to address. I think linebacker is the next position that they're going to want to address. They're going to want to add more depth there. Because you have to think about it here. Wide receiver room, plenty of depth. Offensive line room, plenty of depth. Safety and cornerback room, plenty of depth. Think about it. The positions that where the Lions are going to be having the biggest potential issues about injuries, they have got a crap ton of depth there. They've got crap ton of depth and they've got crap ton of talent. They've got it. So now it's like, okay, move to the next areas. The next areas where I think the Lions could potentially add stuff would be either offensive guard, so interior offensive line, because you could also, because with offensive guards, it's like, listen, you also are potentially going to be looking for guys that can also had no help with the center role. But at the same time, linebacker is another position I could see that the Lions would really like to go after, add some more there because of the fact of losing Alex Anzalone. And another position that I think the Lions could go after would be tight end. Because again, the thing for me is that, again, with Drew Petzing as your offensive coordinator and that 13 personnel, you want to have a good rotation and a good amount of tight ends that can play a multiple capacity role. And again, the one tight end that I could see the Lions really, really, really going after is Texas A&M Nate Borkerker. I could see that one happening. I could see that happening because it's like, listen, you take a look at Nate Borkerker. This is a guy that catches damn near anything thrown his way. He is an excellent, excellent run blocker. He is a guy that as a tight end, he fits exactly what the Lions are looking for as far as a can do it all tight end. And getting him in the 5th round is a beautiful amount of value that is going to add more competition to that tight end room that's going to work with, Conklin, that's going to work with, Sam Laporta, that's going to work with Brock Wright. Again, folks, I understand where you guys are coming from with safety, but it's like, listen, I'm going to say this right now. Let me just put this out there for what it is. If the Lions go safety, then you can start really actually worrying where they think they are as far as with Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. Because think about this. If the Lions don't draft a safety, that means that they are confident in where Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch are in relation to their recovery. If they draft a safety, you could call that insurance, but it also means that they're not as confident as far as where their recovery timetable is, or if they're going to recover, how well they're going to be when they come back. I'm just going to tell you this right now. The Lions have plenty of safety help as far as the guys that they already have. You add more to that, that means you are spelling out that they have no confidence as far as where those guys' recovery timetables are at. I'm going to tell you this right now. I would much rather prefer that they don't draft somebody and show that they have confidence that those guys are going to be recovered and ready to rock and roll, rather than draft somebody and send the message of, well, we're not as confident as we would like to be. And I get it. You know, some people want to just hedge their bets. Some people would like to have just more depth and whatever. But let me just put this out there for what it is, folks. There is such a thing as having too much depth at certain spots. And like I just said, the Lions have 12 defensive backs on their roster already. Think about this, folks. You are allowed, what is it? I think 90 guys on a roster before you have to start getting down to your trimming of, to the eventual 53. Think about that. 12 guys out of 90 allotted guys before you start getting to your cut down. That means that more than 10% of the Lions roster at the current moment is defensive backs. J-Mommy, I've heard of that the Lions could use Tesla as a tight end. I don't see that one happening. I don't see that happening. And the reason why I don't see that happening is simply because of the fact that while Tesla is a good blocking receiver, I don't know if he's got enough size to move to tight end. He's definitely, if he were to move to tight end, he would be a tweener. He would be just like a Shannon Sharp. But it's like, listen, I don't think he's got enough bulk to be able to make that transition. He would have to put on easily 30, 40 pounds worth of muscle in order to play tight end. Otherwise, he'd get thrown around like a damn rag doll. The only way I could see the Lions using him at tight end would be in like specialty design plays. I could not see them moving him there as a full-time position switch. We have, I believe we have 6 left because we have 2 fifths, 2 sixths, 2 sevenths. So I think actually we have 7 picks left because we also still have a 4th left. Oh, for the last couple of years, DC, it's been extremely hard to make this roster. It's not like the years of old where it's like, hey, anybody could make the Lions roster. And again, go back to what I've said in previous episodes. Go back to what Dan Campbell and go back to what, Brad Holmes have talked about. This is going to be an extremely competitive offseason. J-Mommy, it's not about the height. The height's not the problem. It's the weight. If you're going to play tight end in the NFL, you have to be like 260 pounds, 250 at a bare minimum, because you're dealing with edge rushers that are 260, 270 and linebackers that are going to be like 240, 250. If you're and I think, what is it? I think Tesla's at like 220. He would have to put on 20, 30 pounds of mass in order to play tight end. And you have to think about it here. At 4, I think his speed is like 4.4. If he puts on 20, 30 pounds of mass, he's going to slow down at least a second or two, which is still fast for a tight end. But again, is that the best way to use him? I don't think so. Isaac Tesla as a wide receiver is really going to be a special commodity rather than bumping him inside to tight end. I don't see the Lions doing that. And the fact that the Lions signed a tight end this offseason, and I think they're going to draft a tight end, I think that tells me that they're going to keep him at wide receiver and continue to develop him there. Yeah, in the 31 formation, you could have Tesla as a 4th tight end as still a wide receiver, but I don't know of many teams that use that formation. Most teams nowadays run everything out of a single back formation, an I formation, or out of gun. I'm going to say this, you don't really see a whole lot of squirrely positions anymore. But anyway, folks, I mean, I look at this draft so far, and I'm extremely pleased with it. I think the Lions have done exactly what they needed to do. I believe that they have done an excellent job with the players that they've brought in. High football IQ guys, high football character guys, just high character guys in general. And I think that they're guys that are going to make a good impact right away. Now, I'm not expecting them to be, superstars right out of the gate. But what you're looking for are good, solid guys that can make a solid impact right away. And I think that's exactly what you're going to get with Moore and Miller right off the bat. Miller is going to be an instant plug-and-play starter. He's going to improve very quickly, with having Penei Sewell to talk to and Hank Fraley being his coach. The same thing is going to happen with Derek Moore. He is going to improve vastly, having Aiden Hutchinson mentoring him on one side, and then also having somebody help me out here. Who's the defensive line coach here? I can't remember his name, but I know he's one of the best, and we picked him up from the Buccaneers a year ago or 2 years ago. But you think about that, the Lions literally have now got a situation where they have literally carbon copied both the picks that they've done in reverse. Great position coaches with a superstar mentor on the opposite side who can help their development. Damage Justice, what I'm drinking here is Mountain Dew. Same thing I was drinking last night. Anyway, definitely going to have plenty to talk about with the Derek Moore pick, because I can tell you this right now. There's definitely going to be a lot of Lions fans that love the pick because of the fact it's from Michigan, that it is an edge rusher. But I'm telling you, sure as God made little green apples, there is going to be somebody somewhere who is going to look at that pick and is going to absolutely say that it was a reach. Because let me tell you this, I've already seen people talk about the Blake Miller pick as if it was a reach. You haven't really missed anything, Dean. I'll be honest, I've had my earbud out from the draft because I really haven't cared. But it looks like the Vikings just picked up Jake Golday, which he's a guy that I've definitely had my eye on. Damn good, solid linebacker, has good, special teams ability. So I actually think that the Vikings got a pretty good pick there in Jake Golday. I actually like that pick better for them than I do the Caleb Banks pick that they made in the first round yesterday. But so far, I think that the Lions have done exactly what fans wanted them to do. They got aggressive in the second round. They traded up, got an edge rusher, a solid, good edge rusher. I think that, again, if you're looking at this draft, you can't look at it as a Lions fan, a sincere, honest Lions fan, as anything other than a tremendous success. I know people outside of the organization are going to say, oh, reach this, reach that, not as good, could have had different players, but I'm going to just say this right now. You know what? They be haters. And the reason they're probably haters is because they're looking at it like, man, the Lions could have really, really, really gotten some damn good players here, and they could really do some damage. Because you have to think about it. Blake Miller and Derek Moore, they have solidified the trenches on both sides of the ball. And what has everybody said that has played football, knows football, understands football? How do you win? You win in the trenches. That's how you win. So if that's how you win, take a look at both sides of the line for the offensive and defensive line for the Detroit Lions. Look at the offensive line. You've got right now as your potential offensive starting unit for offensive line, Penei Sewell, Christian Mahogany, Cade Mays, Tate Ratledge, Blake Miller. Damn good offensive line. Some people might say that it's still not as good as the 2024 offensive line. I say it is just as good. because I personally think that Christian Mahogany is just about on the same level as Graham Glasgow is, as he was at left guard. Maybe a slight tick better, but Christian Mahogany's not a guarantee to hold that spot because you have Miles Frazier. Then, like I said, you now move to the opposite side of the ball and you talk defensive line. Derek Moore, Tyleik Williams, Aleem McNeil, Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, dude, you have got a damn formidable trench warfare on both sides of the line. Defensive line's got dogs. Offensive line's got some dogs. They got some beasts. They got some maulers. They got guys that will get after you. I'm going to just call it for what it is. If you take a look at what the Lions have, both sides of the trenches, I don't think you're going to find a whole lot of teams that are going to have a much better trench warfare as far as offensive and defensive line. Rich Forrest, I've been talking about it for the last couple of minutes. I don't think the Lions are going to go secondary. Linebacker, I can definitely see them doing that. But secondary, I don't see them doing that. But overall, I think the Lions have really done a good job this offseason as far as with the additions that they've made. And you know what? They have done it by playing smart and not by overspending for stuff. You get the second best center in the free agency market in Cade Mays. You pay him a third of what you would have had to pay for Tyler Linderbaum. You get a good replacement for Dan Skipper and Larry Barone. You get a veteran guy in Juice Scruggs who can play all the interior offensive lineman positions. You just draft Blake Miller, who's an instant plug-and-play starter at offensive tackle, and move Penei Sewell to left tackle. You just draft Derek Moore, and you have DJ Wanham, and you also have Ahmed Hazanin that's also going to be part of that rotation. And again, you also bring back guys like Rock Ya-Sin, Malcolm Rodriguez. You bring in Roger McCreary. I mean, the way I look at it is like, listen, this is what Brad Holmes does. People might not think the moves that he makes are the sexiest or the most flashy picks, but they cannot be denied as being important picks. They cannot be denied as being instrumentally, fundamentally good, solid picks. You all wanted to say that Brad Holmes doesn't know how to cook anymore. This is what Brad Holmes cooking is. It's not the most flashiest dish. It's not the dish that's going to knock you off your feet anymore. It's a dish that's like, hey, I know exactly what I'm getting here, and I'm getting a good quality, dinner here. Think about it here. When Brad Holmes first came on the scene, he was kind of like, the Gordon Ramsay. It's like, oh my God, this guy's just pulling out all the stops and just making all these great dishes and just absolutely wowing us with his drafts. Now he's kind of like the established GM, and it's like, hey, you know what you're going to get. And when you get it, it's going to be pretty damn good. Yeah, every person's going to have a bad pick here or there. They're going to have a bad move here or there. But it's like, listen, all kidding aside, Brad Holmes has been one of the most reliable GMs in terms of getting good players and at the same time getting them at good value. Oh, I kid. Yuan, I absolutely have no doubt in my mind that Packers fans aren't happy. Think about it, folks. Packers fans quite literally have, let's see here. They just drafted a cornerback. If I'm reading this correctly, because I haven't had my earbud in. Yeah, they've drafted a cornerback out of South Carolina. I'm going to tell you this right now. That's probably not at all what Packers fans were wanting. But, I mean, you have to think about it here. This is, and again, think about this for what it is, folks. Think about this for what it is. Let's just divvy back really quickly to the whole edge rushing conversation with Derek Moore. This is what happens when you trade big time capital for a player like Micah Parsons. You have now made a substantial investment to get a player that is now going to be your first round draft pick, not only this year, but next year. Think about that. The Packers had to trade 2 first-round draft picks, if I recall correctly, to get Micah Parsons, if I recall correctly. And the thing of it is that now you don't have a first-round draft pick this year, which means now you're in the second round. And what's your first pick? You draft a cornerback. Not exactly what a lot of fans would like to see as your first pick. No, Michael. The Bears have not drafted anybody other than Thieneman. But think about this, continuing the conversation I was just having with the whole Packers. The Packers right now are feeling the effect of what that Micah Parsons trade is on the negative backside for it. More so than the actual injury itself, because now it's like, hey, you don't have the capability to infuse new top-end talent via the draft. You don't have that first-round draft pick, which now means that your second-round draft pick has to play at a level that you would like to see out of a first-round draft pick. That's an awful lot to ask out of a second-round draft pick. Not a lot of second-round draft picks can play at a first-round level. So for me, it's like, hey, you know what? That is the downside with trading big-time draft capital for guys like, Micah Parsons, guys like Sauce Gardner. Yeah, you are expecting immediate guys to come in and play and do well. And think about this, folks. What happened with both of those guys? They got injured and they couldn't finish the season. So you traded a first-round draft pick and you didn't even get a full season of work out of them because of injuries. And because of those injuries, along with other injuries, it wound up screwing the Colts out of the playoffs, and it wound up screwing the Packers once they got into the playoffs. This is why I don't think the Lions make big-time trades for players, because the risk of getting a player like that means that it has to immediately work. There's not a lot of guys that you can ask to come straight in and they're going to immediately make a difference. It's much easier, it's much of a safer bet to draft guys, make trades in the draft to have guys that say, okay, you know what? We're expecting you to come in and make an immediate impact. But we're not expecting superstar level results like what you'd expect from a Micah Parsons, like what you would expect from a Sauce Gardner. That's what you're expecting when you make a trade like that. You are expecting immediate superstar results. And I'm going to tell you this right now. That is not easy to do because you're in a new team, new culture, new environment, new system, whole new everything. It is let me just put it for you this way. Imagine a new player being like an elephant that has been running at, 20, 30 miles an hour straight, and then all of a sudden you got to stop on a dime and you've got to turn 90 degrees. Let me ask you this. How well does an elephant turn 90 degrees going 30 miles an hour stopping on a dime? Doesn't work very well at all. You're absolutely right, Juan Buchanan. The Lions have addressed the biggest holes that they had. And again, what have I been saying for months? Literally, all you guys that are in the live stream right now, what did I say they were going to do for months and months and months on end? I said the same thing. Draft offensive tackle first, draft edge rusher second. And I literally said this also. I said the only thing that nobody knows is who those guys are going to be. But I said it's going to be an offensive tackle first, and I said it's going to be an edge rusher second. I've been saying that for months. Been saying it for months. And literally the names that have been thrown around had been whatever. Some people thought it was going to be Caden Proctor. Some people thought it was going to be Monroe Freeling. Some people thought this. Some people thought that. Some people wanted to switch it up and say, it was going to be edge rusher first and then tackle second. I kept sticking to my guns and saying, no, offensive tackle is where they're going to go first. All that was up in debate was who was going to be the guy they drafted. And they ultimately went with Blake Miller, and I believe it was the right pick. And then in the second round, they got aggressive, they traded up, and they got a guy in Derek Moore who is a high football IQ guy, high football character guy, is going to fit exactly what the Lions need and want. So for me, it's like, listen, for any Lions fan, pardon my French, that has wanted to bitch, whine, cry, and moan bloody ass murder at Brad Holmes for the last 3 months, I'm going to say this word, and I'm going to say it with all sincerity. Shut the fuck up now. Shut up. You can now not say another damn word about Brad Holmes not doing his job. Brad Holmes has done his job. He has done exactly what you wanted. So please, for the love of God, do one of two things. Either shut the fuck up and get back on the bandwagon, or find a different team. Because I've gotten sincerely tired of hearing people say, oh, Brad Holmes sucks. Brad Holmes doesn't do this. Brad Holmes does not do that. Brad Holmes has done exactly what you wanted. He's gotten your edge rusher. He's gotten your offensive tackle. He's fixed the offensive line. He has fixed the defensive line. So you know what? You've got nothing left to complain about. Personally, lots of power. I think there's a good chance of it. I personally think there's a good chance that the Lions could trade up into the third round. Because of the fact, and again, I've said this before, and this was back when we were at pick number 50. Now we moved up 6 spots and we went to pick 44. So now it's definitely bigger than 70 picks of a difference between between the pick that you had in the second round and the pick in fourth round. You're talking a 70, point or a 70 pick gap between pick number 44 and pick 118. Now, whether or not the Lions decide to package a 5th and a 6th with something in their next year's draft, I don't know. But I would not at all be surprised if the Lions decided to trade and get a third-round pick, probably towards the mid to late portion of the third round. Because let's think about this here. Where has Brad Holmes done a lot of his trading recently? Into the third round. The Broderick Martin trade, the Isaac Tesla trade. Hey, that's where a lot of those trades have gone into. So I would not at all be surprised if Brad Holmes sees a player that he really likes and he can make a deal to get into that third round and still keep that fourth round pick, give up a 5th and a 6th and maybe a 4th next year or whatever. Because you can think about this right now, folks. The Lions, like every other team, can trade picks all the way up to the 2027 draft. Or sorry, no, the 2028 draft, because it's 2026 right now. So they can trade picks for this year's draft, they can trade picks for next year's draft, and they can trade picks for the draft after that. So the Lions do have the ability to spread out that hit a little bit to get a pick right now. Oh, you're absolutely right, Yuan Buchanan, because again, let's just look at this for what it is. For an edge rusher, the most debilitating injuries for an edge rusher are knee injuries and ankle injuries. That's why when people were talking about, the Aiden Hutchinson injury, I was like, listen, Aiden Hutchinson's going to be fine. He had a lower leg injury, but it was a broken bone. Had no structural injuries to his ligaments, tendons, or anything else. It was just a broken bone. That's not the case with Micah Parsons. He had a tore ACL, and I think it was also either a tore ACL and MCL or tore ACL and PCL. So to me, it's like, think about this. For an edge rusher, your muscles have to be able to bend in a way that is not typical to the human body normally. You have to get that flexion. You have to get that bend and empower at the same time. When you tear a muscle like your ACL, MCL, PCL, to get that muscle to be able to bend and torque and put that power back in, it's not easy to do, even with superb rehab. So to me, it's like, okay, Micah Parsons tore that ACL literally 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the season. He's not going to be ready to play until probably the midway point of the season for the Packers. And like you said, he's probably not going to be back to full speed until at best the end of this upcoming season. Honestly, I'm going to tell you this right now. The one team that I think is going to be the biggest surprise as far as falling off a cliff this year is probably going to be the Packers. And the reason why is because they have put a lot of their resources into a win now kind of mode, because that's what you get with the Micah Parsons trade. It's a win now kind of thing. And you have to think about this. Think about this for sincerely what it means. You don't have Micah Parsons now being able to play for at least one half of the year. Then on top of that, the Packers also lost their defensive coordinator in Jeff Hafley. They're now having to redo their entire defensive scheme around what's his name? Gannon, the former head coach of the Cardinals. And let's think about this. I talked about this earlier this year. That is going to be a huge transition for the Packers defense. Why? Because the Packers defense under Jeff Hafley was an extremely aggressive man defense. Jeff Hafley was known for being extremely aggressive with his man coverages. Gannon from the Cardinals, he is known for being a more conservative zone defense. I don't see that working very well. I don't see it working well at all. You were talking about literally having that defense completely deviate from what it normally does. So we'll see what happens. And then on top of that, if I recall correctly, didn't the Packers just trade away one of their wide receivers as well? So not only did they lose a lot of defensive talent, including a coach, they just traded away one of their wide receivers as well. And what was the first pick that they went with? Not a wide receiver. They went with a cornerback. Hello, make that make sense, cheeseheads, or are there too many holes in your head? Like I said, Dean, the Packers, I honestly think, are afraid of the Lions because wow, holy cow. The tight end that I thought the Lions would go after went in the third round. So he went a whole round higher than what I was anticipating. Nate Bokerker just went to the Jaguars. I just saw that flash across, by my draft, by the draft broadcast. I was not expecting Nate Bokerker to go this high. Bit of a reach here by the Jaguars because he was selected as a late fourth round draft pick, and he just got drafted in the second round. So he actually got drafted 2 rounds higher than what he was initially slotted as. But getting back to what I was talking about with Gannon and Petzing, you have to think about it here. The Packers knew they were going to need a defensive coordinator after Jeff Hafley went and became the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. They could have gone with any number of guys for that role because the Packers had a good defense under Jeff Hafley. So it wasn't like they were having to sell that job. So what do? They go out and get the head coach opposite of Drew Petzing when he was the head coach of the Cardinals and Petzing was the offensive coordinator. You can say what you want about, Gannon was a really good defensive coordinator when he was with the Eagles or whatever the hell it was. Realistically, that was more about countering the Petzing hire than anything else. The Packers are afraid of the Lions, and they've got good reason to be afraid. Because honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again now, and I will say it in the future. The reason why the Lions didn't win those games against the Packers wasn't because they didn't have the talent. They absolutely had the talent. What they didn't have was the coaching, and that was on offense. John Morton screwed us over, particularly in the offense's capabilities, in order to be actually able, to formulate good offensive game plans. I don't think, I'm going to say this, not that I don't think, I know that's not going to be the case now. Drew Petzing is going to have that offense running like a well-oiled machine. And you have to think about this. And I just saw this comment by Lone Wolf that also adds into it. You've now also got Mike Kafka in there as well, who's also going to be helping. And you've also got David Shaw also still helping. And you've got Jared Goff helping. You've got 4 offensive coordinator-like minds that are all going to be formulating around how do we get this offense working the best that it possibly can. And it's all going to be in the same room. 4 versus 1 in terms of intellectual minds. Sorry. The Lions are going to win over freaking Gannon every single time. Yeah, the Packers, I think, are going to have a big fall off this year because you also have to think about this as well. What is the biggest reason why the Packers do well or don't do well? It's primarily Jordan Love. And the biggest reason with Jordan Love as far as why they can't or cannot get somewhere is because of whether or not he can stay healthy and can play at a consistent level. When he's playing well and he's healthy, they can win a lot of games. But the problem is that Jordan Love has not been able to stay consistently healthy the last couple of years. And on top of that, even when he has been able to play, he's not been as consistent as you would like to see out of a franchise quarterback. That's why when I hear people say, oh, Jordan Love's a top 10 quarterback. No, he's not. At best, he's a top 12, top 13 quarterback. When he's on, yeah, he's a top 10 quarterback, but he's not always on. Not like Jared Goff. Jared Goff with a hodgepodge offensive line and virtually no offensive coordinator assistance was still able to be a top 10 producing quarterback in terms of statistics. Jordan Love has not been a top 10 producing quarterback in most of his statistics at any point during his career. Yeah, and that's also true as well for 49 Horizon. There's no Malik Willis either. So if you don't have Jordan Love playing well or he goes down with injury, you don't have Malik Willis to come in and to potentially steady the ship for a while because he also went with Jeff Hafley to the Dolphins to be their starter there. And like somebody said, realistically, the only team that I see as a threat to the Lions in the NFC North is the Bears. And the thing with the Bears is that I am expecting to a certain degree that the Bears are going to fall off a little bit as well this offseason and this year because, okay, you know what? They had the ability, like the Lions did, and kind of surprise everybody after 2024 and kind of came out with Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and all that stuff. Fine, whatever. You're not surprising anybody now. And again, the one thing I've known about the Bears the last couple of years is that, okay, they brought in these new offensive head coaches. First year, they do really well, but then the second year, they don't do as well. Third year, they really start falling off, and then it's like, okay, now we're looking at potentially getting a new coach because that's what happened with Matt Nagy. That's what exactly happened with him. First year, oh, hey, you know what? They're doing great. They get to the playoffs. Everyone's feeling hopeful. And then the next year, they're 9-8, 8-8, whatever. They can get back. And then by year 3, year 4, everybody's starting to talk about, oh, well, we need a new head coach because we're not getting what we were expecting. And the Bears are making their selection this point. Just waiting to see for the pick to come in over the broadcast. Because I'm kind of curious because obviously they got a really good pick with Thieneman in the first round. So I'm curious as to who they're going to get in the second round here. So the Bears got their center. They went with Logan Jones out of Iowa. Interesting. Very interesting. I would have thought they would have gone with, what's that other center? Not the one, Lou. Lou out of Auburn. I would have thought they would have gone with Lou out of Auburn for that particular position or Jake Slaughter, but they decided to go Logan Jones. Interesting. And I see what you're saying, Lone Wolf. I see what you're saying, Dean DeGreer, about the Vikings being, a tough out because I'll be honest. Let's just call it for what it is. The reason why the Vikings are a tough team to play against, it's all to do with one particular player, or sorry, not player, one particular person, and it's not even the head coach. It's the defensive coordinator. Because of the fact that they have, Flores as their defensive coordinator, that is what makes them a really tough team to play against. Because every time that they play any team, that defense is going to give that team an absolute number of fits. Because Brian Flores always has his defense ready to play. The biggest problem with the Vikings right now is the offense. And it's because they don't have a clear answer or solution in terms of their, quarterback. You've got Kyler Murray who's coming in on a 1-year prove-it deal, and you don't know what you're going to do with freaking J.J. McCarthy. But surprisingly, actually, Brad Holmes is doing his second day of draft conferencing. So I wonder if that means that he's calling it a day. So hold on here. I'm gonna back out of the draft coverage here for a minute. I want to have my ear in on what Brad Holmes is talking about here because I'm very curious to see if this conference that Brad Holmes is having is an indication that they're not going to trade back up into the third round. We could move up into the third, but when you typically see a GM do a press conference after a draft pick, that usually signals they're done for the night. But I sincerely doubt that's going to happen. I agree, Juwan. I agree. Bears are going to have a really hard time trying to come out this year because nobody's going to be looking at them as a up-and-coming team anymore. So independent Aquaman, the Patriots didn't make a selection in the first round, but they did make a selection in the second round. They selected Gabe Yakus in the second round, an edge rusher. I don't know if he was there to actually select him or not. I mean, at this point now, I mean, who knows what's going on with Mike Vrabel as far as his job security. I think at this point, if I was Mike Vrabel, I'd be more worried about your marriage rather than your job security. I would say this, Jay, if you had to drink every time I said the word listen, you'd probably get drunk very quickly. And the reason I say that is because I have noticed that a lot of people don't listen when I talk. They generally hear, but they don't listen. Again, there is a difference between listening and hearing. Oh, I would say so, considering the fact that Mike Vrabel has been a head coach twice in the NFL. He's got plenty of money. And I would say this, considering the fact that it looks like that, he has been fooling around. You'd have to hope that his wife doesn't take him to the cleaners. But I mean, I was going to say this. It's kind of interesting if you honestly think about it, how people that have been associated with the Patriots front office have really come under a lot of scrutiny over the years as far as how they've handled themselves off the field. You've seen it with, Robert Kraft. You've seen it now with Mike Vrabel. You also seen guys like Matt Patricia who have gotten into trouble with things that they have said while on, the job, or with, comments that they've said while they were coaching with, Darius Slay when he was here. It's kind of interesting how there's been a lot of personal problems that have come up for guys that used to be associated with that Patriots culture. I mean, hell, even what's the other guy that I'm thinking about here? Because you've had Mike Vrabel, you've had Robert Kraft, you've had Matt Patricia. All those guys have had incidents either while on the job, off the field, on the field, whatever. And it's like, okay, you really start wondering about that, individual culture that the Patriots have had as far as with personal conduct. Rich Lawrence asks if I think Brad is going to lighten up with the full-blown tackle practice. I don't think Brad or Dan's going to lighten up as far as tackle practices. What I do know they're not doing this year is joint practices. I mean, DC, I'm just going to say this, the fact that Belichick is in his late 70s and he's got a, really, really young girlfriend, it's like, you know what? I've seen all manner of things in Hollywood and with popular celebrity people as far as dating people that are way, way, way younger than what they are. I mean, for crying out loud, what's her face? Celine Dion, when she married her husband, I think there was like a 30-year age gap. over, over their marriage. So it's like, hey, you know what? I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, I can't say anything because my wife is 10 years older than me. So it's like age in that sense is nothing but a number. Now, obviously, you get into a really, really bad, area when you start talking about people saying, oh, well, teenagers and this and that. And it's like, listen, it's like there's a point where, it's clearly not acceptable. And that's one of them. So for me, it's like, okay, here, the fact that Bill Belichick is in his late 70s and his girlfriend's like in her 20s, yeah, it definitely has a creeper vibe to it. But if nothing else, it's like, listen, she clearly knows what she's doing. She clearly knows that she's in a relationship and that, you know what, if she wants to, she can leave and she's of the legal age. But where you start really getting into a problem is when people want to start fuddling around with that age range of 17, 16, and all that nonsense. And it's like, listen, I don't care how you want to try and slice that. That's wrong. So to me, it's like, hey, you know what? If Bill's 70 plus something and his girlfriend's 20, it's like, hey, I guess you know what? Money can buy happiness in that situation. Maybe she does love him. I don't know. I can't speak for that. But it's like, listen, when, somebody's 50 years older than you, it's like, dude, you're talking about a whole lifetime in there. So it's like, I mean, you do with that what you will. But, I mean, talking about Bill and his whole situation with the difference between him and his girlfriend in terms of age, talking about Robert Kraft, about the whole stuff that's happened with him as far as, I don't remember, was it massage therapists or was it, actual ladies of the night? There's that. And then, obviously there's now a situation with Mike Vrabel and the freaking, athletic reporter. It's like, listen, guys, it's like, I don't care what you do in the bedroom, but it's like, don't make it a public spectacle. Please don't make it a public spectacle. And certainly don't do it if you're married. Because to me, it's like, listen, it's like what you do in your private time, that's why it's called personal. It's why it's called private. But the moment you start getting into legality questions, that's where it becomes a problem. So, I mean, again, that's one of those questions where it gets really problematic as far as having a conversation about it. But as far as I'm concerned, it's like, listen, if they're both of legal age of consent, which is 18 years old, it's like, then at that point, then the only question or concern becomes, okay, was it consensual? And at the same time, is the person single? Because it's like, listen, we live in a society where it's like, hey, we still take marriage pretty seriously. I mean, obviously we have a 50% divorce rate in our country, but it's like, hey, if you're married, you're supposed to you're expected to honor your wedding vows. I mean, I know now in today's culture, we have what are known as open marriages, but I don't think Mike Vrabel has one of those. And even if he did, I would imagine that with the NFL's personal conduct rules, that would be a gray area for them. Again, just me spitballing there. So, again, it's one of those situations that it's a personal matter. I can't really speak too highly on it because, again, I'm not going to judge what people do in their own personal lives because I don't know all the details. But I will say this, there's a reason why people get very, very judgmental about stuff like this. It's not only that, it's considered ethically and morally wrong, but at the same time, it's, again, for tabloids and obviously for news media and all that stuff, it really, it really sells. So, again, it is what it is. But Here's what I'm probably going to do, folks. Not saying that I don't think that Brad Holmes couldn't trade up into the third round. I believe that still could happen. But I have stuff that I have to get taken care of here, ready for the movers that are showing up tomorrow to pick up my household goods. So I am going to end my podcast for my live stream tonight, even though obviously we're just probably now getting into the third round here. But I need to make sure stuff is taken care of, because if I recall correctly, I think the movers are going to be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. And it's like, okay, I've obviously got to make content for tomorrow as far as, what the episode for Derek Moore and other stuff that I plan on talking about. But at the same time, I want to make sure everything is taken care of, so that way I don't have any, hidden surprises when they do show up. So I'm going to end this live stream. And you know what? If the Lions do decide to trade up into the third round, obviously I will talk about that in the video as well. But for right now, I'm going to have to get some other stuff taken care of. But I appreciate all of you that have tuned in for this one. If I'm able to live stream tomorrow, I will try to live stream. But I'm just going to let you know, chances are I'm probably not going to be able to, because of the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm going to be dealing with, the movers for most of the day. So I'm going to end this, get myself ready for tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. But until then, just wanted to say thank you all for tuning in for this live stream. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Hope you all have been enjoying the draft. Hope you all have had a good night as far as, getting, the edge rusher that you wanted. And we'll see what happens tomorrow with rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. So, all right. I will talk to you all tomorrow, potentially one way or the other, whether it's in a live stream or whether it's in a pre-recorded video. But until then, good night and God bless.